on Check 6 News, dropping nets and bombs in the salmon fish wars with the U.S. An investigation into the handling of Jason Gamache leads to changes to BC's probation system. And will Victoria buskers be forced to go unplugged? Good evening. The first shot in the salmon fishing war between Canada and the United States has been fired by Canada. The flow of American fishing vessels through Canadian waters will be restricted. Effective Wednesday, U.S. fish boats will have to buy a $1,500 license each time they travel through Canadian channels and straits. It's a move aimed at American fishers taking Canadian fish in Alaskan waters. Federal Fisheries Minister Brian Tobin says Canada can no longer facilitate what he calls irresponsible fishing by its neighbors.
Since 1985, interception of Canadian salmon by Alaskan interest has increased by 90%. Overall, U.S. interceptions has increased by 50%. By contrast, Canadian interception of U.S. salmon has decreased by 40%. The only proposal we have seen from the United States would see the value of the American inequity grow from 65 million to 100 million this year.
Ron Leffler is getting his boat ready for a long trip.
Sitka, that's where I fish out of.
Leffler is a salmon this time of year, but this year it's a ghost town.
This is our 60th birthday. As far as I know, we're the oldest family-owned resort on the west coast of the United States.
CQ was renowned as a place to catch lots of fish, Chinook mostly, but the stocks are decimated, fishing is banned, and Olson's scale hangs empty.
We'd hope to pass it on to my children, but there's no way when you get a complete closure. I mean, we're just people that worked hard all our lives and tried to feed our families and want to pass it on to our kids and hoping they were passing on to their kids.
Fishing is closed in CQ, but just across the strait, Canadians are catching salmon, a fact that irritates many Americans.
If the tide was going out, I'd start here and catch the current and work down along the shoreline here.
But surprisingly, there is support for Canada's position in the fish war. John Turex's charter boat business has been ruined by the Washington State salmon closure. He's looking for help.
But I think what the Canadians are doing is great. I want them to get out there, and we got to get Clinton in on this. We got to get the Congress. We got to get all you guys in Alaska, because it's not just here. It's everywhere.
If you had something you could say to Canadians, what would it be?
Let's get together, get this thing settled, because it's not only the United States fishermen and the Canadians, we're all going to be losers. There's no fish. I mean, we've got to settle this thing.
At the Port Angeles boat basin, attitudes are harder. Commercial fishermen are mobile, able to untie and go where the fish are, places like Alaska.
I hope they don't actually have a fish war, is what I'm hoping. I know we won't, because I fish Alaska and we always take the cuts. Canada has the fish war, so I'm hoping that it really won't exist.
So far, most American fishermen seem to have dodged Canada's first shot of the war. If Ron Leffler gets his boat ready quickly, he too will miss the Canadian transit levy. But neither American or Canadian fishermen can run away from the real problem, dwindling salmon stocks. Ed Watson, Check 6 News, Port Angeles.
Changes are coming to the probation system in BC following an investigation into the handling of Jason Gamache. Gamache is the teenager who, while on probation for sexually assaulting children, raped and murdered a 6-year-old girl in Courtenay.
Honourable Speaker, I rise today to inform the honourable members of the results of an investigation into the handling of the case of Jason Gamache.
A somber Attorney General announcing changes to the probation system.
I have been deeply troubled by the brutality and the senselessness of the crime that took the life of Dawn Shaw. Her tragic death and the suffering of her family, friends, and the people of her community affected all British Columbians.
Jason Gamache was a young offender on probation who murdered 6-year-old Dawn Shaw in Courtenay in October 1992. Neighbors, school officials, and other members of the community, including local RCMP, were not informed that Gamache was a convicted sexual offender. The Attorney General is implementing all of the recommendations of lawyer Barbara Fisher, whose independent report was tabled today. The Corrections Branch will reorganize probation officers' workloads to give priority to high-risk offenders. A new province-wide policy for young sex offenders will be implemented within 90 days. Probation officers will notify key people about sex offenders present in their communities. Probation officers will make regular visits to young offenders' homes to assess suitability of dwellings. And training for probation officers will be improved.
There are some major mistakes being made, a lack of judgment. It is in part a lack of training, lack of supervision, but I think the bottom line is that people show poor judgment.
What can you do about that?
Well, either train them better or hire smarter people, I suppose.
Meantime, the Reform Party wonders if these changes go far enough.
The protecting the rights of criminals is not unimportant. It just must come second to protecting the rights and the freedoms of the individuals who are at risk.
You don't feel that's been happening up until now?
I think that the only way we can ensure that's going to happen is with a national registry for sex offenders, young offenders, and older offenders.
But the Attorney General says rehabilitation remains a top priority.
What the correction system tries to do is to make sure that people are ready to go back in, are ready to re-enter, are ready to be able to socialize properly in their communities. Occasionally there's a failure, but there aren't many. There are occasionally failures.
And when there are, we have a cost like a Don Shaw.
When we have failures, we have horrific events occur. And
Robin Adair, Check 6 News from the legislature.
Saanich Councillor Ray Williams wants charges laid against street youths he says attacked him on the roof of his downtown Victoria store yesterday. Williams says he was struck on the side of the head by a stick during the fight and admits to striking one young man with an axe handle. Williams and the street kids could all be charged with assault.
A 21-year-old man was among the 3 arrested Wednesday morning at Bay and Blanchard shortly after the incident. A large bloodied stick was taken as evidence. The blood may have been from a wound the young man suffered during the fight. He was taken to Royal Jubilee Hospital where he received 6 stitches to his head.
Now this is some of the problems we're having. See how they're smashing all our ventilators?
Anyone wanting to get onto the roof of Williams Meats needs only hop a low wall from the city parkade. The confrontation started at about 10:30 a.m. when Williams discovered the young people in the boiler room above his delicatessen.
I opened the door, and lo and behold, I found 4 young people and a dog sleeping.
What kind of smells around here?
Well, this is the part that's somewhat disconcerting, is they don't seem to mind to defecate in their own nest. I was quite vocal with them, telling them that they were on to do very well. And I didn't kick it, I prodded it, hoping that it would just get up and move on. And at that time, the girl just was all over me. I pulled her to the ground, she pulled me to the ground, the guys were on top of me, and it was just a free-for-all. And I decided discretion was the better part of valor, and I left. My manager and others were on their way up. My manager had an axe handle with him, and I asked him, I took it away from him. We came back up, confronted the individuals. They're now in the parkade. The young fellow started to come at me again, and I wasn't about to give him a second chance. Once bitten, twice wary. So I swung at him, and apparently I must have connected on the top of his head.
But police say because Williams went back and confronted the young man on public property, he may be charged with assault.
It would be premature for me to say whether he can be charged or not, because we still have to establish what occurred after the incident in the parkade, and that's still under investigation.
In addition to the 21-year-old, police arrested a 16-year-old male and a 17-year-old female. One female got away. Philip Campbell, Check 6 News.
Still to come, will Victoria buskers be forced to turn down the volume? The Liberal opposition has produced what it says is a document indicating charity bingo money may have flowed from the Nanaimo Commonwealth Holding Society to NDP election campaigns. The society, with close ties to the NDP, has pleaded guilty to criminal charges involving the bingo money. But the NDP isn't saying much until sentencing happens later this month.
Years ago, everybody who was a New Democrat in Nanaimo obviously had some connection with the Commonwealth Society.
Lovick is a former director of Nanaimo Commonwealth Holding Society, and it appears some charity money may have gone into his re-election campaign.
guys dealing with this particular reporter.
Did you benefit potentially in any way from that money? And can you say for sure that you didn't?
And you're talking in 1986 election?
86, 91,
yeah.
anytime?
I think it's conceivable that we would have had a meeting, for example, in Nanaimo, you know, of our, let's say the election day workers or something, okay, getting your group together before election day. We may well have had a meeting in a hall that was owned by the Commonwealth Society. In that sense, Ben, yes, indeed, I would have benefited, no question.
Any cash?
And nor would I make apologies for doing that.
And the opposition attack over bingo charity money going to NDP coffers continues.
Honourable Speaker, I have in my hands copies of the financial statements of the Nanaimo Commonwealth Holding Society for the years 1988 to 1991, and it lists, Honourable Speaker, thousands of dollars as expenses under the heading of politics.
Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. As I said yesterday, I am going to respect the proceedings that are taking place before the courts right now, the due process.
The Nanaimo Commonwealth Holding Society and 3 related agencies have pleaded guilty to criminal charges, but until sentencing, the exact distribution of $200,000 of charity money remains open to speculation, and New Democrats must weather the storm.
Frankly, I like to think that I have a reasonable reputation in terms of being honest, of answering questions forthrightly and directly, and to have somebody insinuate, in fact, you know, that you're lying or you're being irresponsible or something is not something I take too kindly.
That was not the insinuation. I asked.
Good.
Do you think it would
for you
be...
to be on the defensive, Steve?
No,
I'm sorry,
I'm asking
friends,
you.
I have to go.
If
I have given you as detailed an answer as I can, but I have statutory obligations. See you later.
Victoria City Council will tonight decide the fate of street musicians who use amplifiers. Downtown merchants are complaining excessive noise is hurting business. The street musicians say increased policing and fines would be a better way to deter amplified buskers, and some of them are worried about their ability to make a living.
How's about saving all your time for me? You gotta keep this show. Oh, what am I gonna do?
Peter Stoney is the musical Mountie. He entertains the crowds who gather in the Inner Harbor, but he fears this may be his swan song.
The City Council have just decided to ban chipmunks and anything like this. So this will probably be my last day down here as the musical Mountie. I think it's an awful shame. No.
Stoney and several street musicians who use amplifiers may soon be looking for a new line of work or will have to use acoustic instruments.
I can't do my show, but somebody can come down here with a big bass drum and bang on a bass drum for 2 hours. That's the law. So, but if a fellow's got an electric piano, you can't lug around a grand piano down here.
Graham Hargrove isn't playing a piano, but he does have to lug his marimba down to Government Street most days. Hargrove, who's working to put himself through school, admits some buskers are getting carried away with noise levels.
I've heard that people consider the decibel system, you know, I guess going around the commissionaires with decibel guns, making sure nobody...
And to make sure his audience has something to dance and cheer about.
Whoa,
Mary Beth Burton, Check 6 News, the Inner Harbor.
After a long silence on the unity issue, the Reform Party has jumped into the fray with a vengeance. It wants to know how the government plans to deal with the threat of Quebec separation and has fired off a letter to the Prime Minister with a list of 20 questions. But so far, there are no answers from a very quiet government.
The letter went to the Prime Minister's office this morning. Manning wrote it last night. He asks questions like, how would the federal debt be split and how would Ottawa be compensated for federal assets in Quebec? What would the federal government do if Quebec wanted to continue using the Canadian dollar? And what would Ottawa do if Quebec's separation posed a threat to national security or public order? Manning says they are questions being asked by rank-and-file Canadians. But other questions on the list were not so clear. Many we talked to today found the questions difficult to understand. What principles and procedures would the Government of Canada apply in securing ratification by the people of all parts of Canada to those aspects of any agreement with the seceding province that affect the interests of those living outside the bounds of the seceding province?
No, you're going to pay for free.
I don't understand that.
I understand that.
I don't know what it means. I have no idea.
To those aspects of
No, it doesn't really burn. Do you understand it? Not really.
This kind of thing isn't necessary.
For senior cabinet ministers, it was a list that barely got a second glance.
There's nothing the matter with intelligent debate, but at the present time, I believe that Daniel Johnson is going to win the provincial election, and I think that that's where all the efforts ought to go.
In any kind of long-range planning, if you're responsible, of course you hope the outcome will be what you're striving for. No one disputes that. But our view is there's also wisdom in having a contingency plan in case you don't.
Academics say many of the questions on this list are actually good ones, but they also say the government really isn't in a position right now to answer them. Liberal strategists today said the federal government must appear optimistic and assume that Daniel Johnson's Liberals will beat the PQ in the coming Quebec election.
Okay, Veronica, I'm packing for the weekend. Do I need sunscreen or rain gear? I thought I needed sunscreen.
Yes, you won't need rain gear, but you
Good.
will need a little umbrella in case those showers come down.
On the West Coast?
Yes.
Showers.
Yeah, we're going to see showers, but it won't be too bad. We won't see any rain, so you'll be all right. Here's a look at the current conditions. We will have one more day of sunshine, and then we're back to some of the showers we had earlier this week. That weak frontal system that's been hanging over the coast is still in our area. The North Coast, Queen Charlotte's, they saw some showers today. They're going to see rain tomorrow, and it's hanging over the coast. It's not too bad in our area, but we will see some showers. The system will be spreading south late Friday, some showers late tomorrow night, clouds mixed with sun for the weekend. On the north and west tonight, cloudy. There is a chance of showers on the north of the island and low of 9. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy, a few showers in the north and highs around 19. On the south and east tonight, cloudy periods and a low of 9. Tomorrow, sunny with some cloudy periods. Clouds will increase later in the day and highs around 21. And we'll see some clouds on the weekend, but mixed with sunshine and west coast southeasterlies 10 to 15 knots. Well, lots of sunshine over the nation's capital as we look at the map of Canada. Some clouds over the lower mainland, showers in Calgary. Sunshine continues for Edmonton. Regina had a few showers today. Clouds over Winnipeg, a few sunny breaks in Toronto. Sunshine in Halifax and clouds over St. John's. And some of the temperatures, it was 20 in Vancouver today, mid-teens over most of the prairies, 13 in Regina, 18 in Winnipeg, low 20s over most of the St. Lawrence, 24 in Toronto today, 16 in Halifax, and St. John's just couldn't climb above 4 degrees. And some of your holiday destinations, it was sunny and 23 degrees in Madrid today, a few clouds and 16 in Paris. And today's resort destination is Stockholm, brought to you by Ensign Travel and Cruise Headquarters with 5 locations in Victoria and the Saanich Peninsula.
To say the police and people of New Brunswick or Fredericton, New Brunswick, had a strange day would be an understatement. They had a fugitive on their hands this morning, but not just any fugitive. This one was only a year old, but definitely did not want to be taken into custody. And in the end, he escaped.
The call came into the Fredericton police force just after 7 o'clock this morning. A fugitive was loose on the streets of the capital city.
Dispatch stated that it was heading down Queen Street downtown, so we headed out that way.
Police tracked the suspect through the downtown area and across the St. John River. Dazed and confused, the outlaw ran for an open field on the city's north side. The police were not able to give us an artist composite of the suspect, but they did give us this file mugshot. Okay, so it wasn't a dangerous criminal. It was a year-old moose. Were you amazed at how much stamina he had?
Yeah, because while we were getting the boat, one of the officers had mentioned that he had stopped about halfway through the river, but I guess he was just resting, and we assumed maybe he would have laid down when he got on the other side, but he just kept going.
The moose finally made a dash for the woods in a field across the street from Agnes Doucette, who was surprised by all the commotion.
I said, there's something going on around here. I said, look at all the cars. And everybody was looking towards the field. I said, there has to be something going on. But what it was, I said, why don't you get out and find out what's going around here?
Giles Henry was also wondering what all the fuss was about. You thought it might have been a manhunt, not a moose hunt.
A manhunt instead of a moose hunt.
Thankfully, this story has a happy ending. The moose made it into the woods on his own, and he didn't have to be tranquilized. He hasn't been heard from since. And for the Fredericton Police Force, it was another case solved.
You know, unusual call. One of those things, you never know what's going to happen in this job, and it was certainly an experience this morning. So.
In Fredericton, Kate Letterick reporting.
Finally tonight, a Comox Valley woman says, thanks to Canada Post, she's had a communication from her dead sister. The woman, who wishes to remain anonymous, says a letter from her sister mailed in 1979 has just been delivered. Her sister died more than 3 years ago. That's our 5:30 report. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again at 11:30. Good night.